Good evening. I'm calling to order tonight's City of Gahanna Committee of the Whole for Monday, August 2022. The first item on our agenda is under Section B, discussions. And the first item under discussions is the salaries discussion. And I will turn this over to Councilwoman McGregor.
Okay, we had talked about the salaries for council because OPERS has changed some of their qualifications to qualify for a health care subsidy. And one of the qualifications is $1,000 per month. The salaries for general retirement are not that high, just for regular retirement, but for the subsidy for health and health care, it's $1,000 per month. And so Jeremy sent us quite a bit of information on wait a minute, let me find it. Where is it? Hang on here. Says quite a bit of information on different salary things that I looked up today. So he sent us a comparison of around Franklin County, the different salaries, and some of them we would be higher than some, lower than some. But I know Reynoldsburg made a consideration for this, for the minimum salary for the service, for just a salary, but they didn't consider it for the health care. And if we're fine as far as the salary goes, but it was just something I brought up that I thought if people, would be in the OPER system for long enough, they would maybe want to take advantage of that. And so when they retire. And one of the things I looked at was somebody, I think Trenton asked me, Mr. Weaver asked about if it would count, there's a way you can buy some extra service if you have served elective service, and you can buy a certain amount extra towards your retirement, but that does not qualify. It's not considered contributing service, and so it would not qualify for the health care subsidy. So anyway, I was just, if nobody wants to do anything, that's fine. It's not going to affect my ability because I don't have enough years for the health care, but I mean somebody else might at some time. So it's just what you all think.
Any other discussion on this item? I did just want to mention, at least for public information and for the record, that according to our council clerk's research, our council member and council president salaries were last adjusted in 2006 for terms beginning effective 2008, and the salary is set at $800 per month with an $100 additional per month for president. And the mayor's salary was last adjusted in 2011 with an effective date of 2012, and that was set at $103,809. The city attorney's salary was adjusted in 2019, effective 2020, and that is set at $78,796 for full-time employment.
The council that was maybe when we changed it for the president, but the council salary has been the same maybe since the early 2000s. That hasn't been adjusted for a long, long time. So I think there's like Hilliard is higher. New Albany's pretty much at just under $12,000. Dublin is about that. So it's whatever whatever most people want to do. That's it.
Yes, Mr. Renner?
Yeah, I deeply appreciate the information brought forth by Councilwoman McGregor and our clerk, Jeremy, for consideration. I don't have an appetite to do anything with salaries. I'm probably in the wrong mindset, but right now I'm just focused on, the subject is, in fairness, not really appreciable much, but it's a To me, it's just a principle thing. We're too close to asking residents for issue 12, and we're so focused on capital projects. I want that to still remain the focus. So, my 2 cents.
Thank you. Mr. Schnetzer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks to the council office and anybody else that put forth the effort to provide that information that we received in our email. Probably no surprise to my council colleagues. It's kind of immediately where I went was into the spreadsheet. And I think there was 107 responses on that spreadsheet, if I remember correctly. And so, how do you group that to relevant data? I just did a quick filter between populations of 25,000 to 50,000 with using kind of the predicate there that the amount of work is somewhat correlated with the population, right? You're going to get a certain amount of requests for, service, et cetera. And in that cohort, the average population was 37,900. The median population was 36,200. So I feel like that's a fairly accurate cohort for the city of Gahanna. And by the way, I'll just say it was a list of 18 cities, excluding the city of Gahanna. The high salary was $20,325 for council. That was in Cuyahoga Falls, and the low salary on the spreadsheet was $5,000, and that was Middletown. Somewhat surprising if you know anything about Middletown. They've got a lot going on. The average salary was $10,770. The median salary was $10,020. So that would put council, excluding the president, within 4% of the median. So I guess the rhetorical question that I would ask my colleagues is, an extra $25 or $50 a month to get to the median. The idiom is the juice worth the squeeze, so to speak. I'd probably err on the side of agreeing with Council President Renner. It's probably not worth it. So it's just my 2 cents.
All right. Thank you, Councilwoman McGregor. Appreciate your bringing this forward.
No problem.
All right. Any other discussion on this item? All right, next item is just an update on the sidewalk maintenance program with our new Director of Engineering. Welcome. And a little bit of a discussion item. Thank you.
Chair Bowers, members of council, here to present or provide an update on the sidewalk maintenance program for the 2021 and 2022 programs. The general update. 2021 program, those individuals that were notified in regards to requiring corrective action that opted out of the program have until mid-October to take corrective action. The city will be inspecting that work to see that they've made that work in conformance with the requirements. Those that are in the program, we're in the process of developing the plan specifications, bid books to go out later this year, receive bids and have that work commence for the 2021 program in March, April of next year. For the 2022 program, we held a town hall on August 2nd. We notified the residents within that program area prior to that. We are in the process of conducting inspections in that program zone. The plan is to notify the residents early in 2023 in regards to areas needing corrective action, giving the residents the opportunity to opt out should they wish to do so, giving them the opportunity over the spring to take corrective action. We'll also be developing plan specifications, bid books to publicly bid that work and have the program commence over the summer months for the 2022 program. That concludes the general update, and I will open it up to any questions from council.
Mr. Weaver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Engineer, and welcome and congratulations. Happy to have you back with the city. Question, I received a couple of emails coming in asking about street trees and when those are getting replaced as part of the program, when they don't qualify for the city replacing them. and sort of what residents can do on that front.
So as a part of the program itself, so if it's a street tree and it's a prohibited street tree that is causing an issue associated with the sidewalk, causing the need for maintenance, that tree is to be removed. It's definitely correct if I'm misstating that.
Sure. Actually, I'm going to ask Director Farrell, so I was like, Stephanie, can you come up here?
Hey, excuse, just, can you double check to make sure that the microphones are working?
I was, that's what I was.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I was doing the same thing, Kevin.
You need to talk into it a bit better? Okay.
Sometimes you have to get very, very close to it.
Can you hear me now? Is the red light on that one?
So you need batteries?
Not the,
There we go. Now it's on.
I don't know where you're being picked up from. You're coming in somewhere.
Can you hear me now? Is that coming? Okay. Do I need to represent everything, or did you capture everything?
Why don't you just, can you repeat what you said at the very end about street trees, and then that'll lead into Director Farrell? Thank you.
So if a street tree is a prohibited street tree within the tree lawn area and it's causing an issue with an adjacent sidewalk that needs repair, that street tree is to be removed, and it's my understanding at cost of the city.
And I'll piggyback to that. If the tree is not a prohibited tree, however, again, we'll evaluate the tree. If there's any way to do some root prunings or anything of that sort to help, then that's something that the city will do as well. As far as a replacement, that is not part of the program. It's not a requirement to replace the tree, but if the citizen does want to replace it, that would be on their own cost, of course, and that would also still require to be on the preferred tree species as well, obviously to help prevent any type of future damage.
I guess for my own edification, in the creation of the sidewalk maintenance program generally, was there any conversation around replacing trees when the city's removing them, or just generally as part of the program?
We did have a conversation because obviously we understand that the street trees are not separate from the sidewalks in many cases. We do have a desire to increase and expand our urban canopy, and the way to do that is through street trees. So that is something that we are evaluating for a street tree program to be funded by city.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because I actually had asked, or had some similar questions around that, and it had been brought up to my attention too. I'm not sure if it was the same constituent or perhaps a different one, about considering being mindful of the urban canopy, being mindful of the curb appeal, all of the benefits that come with street trees, but making sure that our residents are planting the street trees that we've identified as not causing damage to our infrastructure, not invasive species, et cetera. So I can tell you I would have an interest in that coming from the administration, and would certainly support that coming forward in a budget.
Great. Thank you.
If I could add, we had actually extensive conversations, multiple conversations around street trees and what that would look like. Looking at a street tree program, just so we're all clear on that, that involves adding staff, probably several staff members as well. Our estimated cost is about a $500,000 a year add to the budget. So as we're starting to work on budget now, and certainly as we get to the capital improvement plan and how that rolls out and gets incorporated into that, will be something we'll be discussing, not only internally, but then collectively with council.
I guess just to clarify and maybe just discuss on that, or maybe we don't even have to do it now, but perhaps in budget discussion about what other types of roles within either Parks and Rec or in the service department that maybe off-season that type of staff add would be fulfilling. It's clear to me that we need to add staff to City Hall, and so if we can accomplish a goal such as the street tree program while also adding staff in other needed areas, it would seem to make sense, and not just put all that cost into into one program development.
Sure. And that's something that we do. Anytime we look to add a position, we look to, especially our kind of the seasonal-oriented type of positions, is how can we, during an off-season, use those personnel in other roles? Are we, even to the point of looking at our existing staff right now, everybody down from our administrative assistants all the way up to what's on everybody's plate, how are we using people the most effective way possible based on their skill sets, who is able to take on more functions, et cetera. So trying to economize the staff that we currently have before we make that ask for staff is something we always do, but I do appreciate your comment about recognizing the need for additional folks, because we have a lot of work to be done.
Absolutely. Yes, Ms. Spadova.
Thank you. Do you have, just to kind of put it into perspective, like the percentage of sidewalks that are losing trees or the amount of trees? Do you have any type of figures like that that you can share with us?
I don't at the moment, but I can
Okay.
collect that information and get back with you.
Okay. Thank you.
Mrs. McGregor.
I had someone ask, when the city replaces the sidewalks, do they have to get a permit to do the work?
It's within the public right-of-way, so they would be required to get a permit.
The city will have to get a permit for each sidewalk they fix?
They would pull a right-of-way permit for the work within the influence of their property.
The committee room, it was a lot easier for people just to
Sorry.
comment. It's a little bit more formal in here.
Just to clarify, you're asking, will the city have to get a permit or will a resident have to get a permit?
When the city is fixing a resident's property, do they have to get a permit to fix that property?
Well, no, the city will not. The city of Gahanna itself will not have to get a right-of-way permit to replace the sidewalk. Now, a resident doing work within the public right-of-way will have to get a
The resident
right-of-way
doing his
permit.
own work would have to get one, but the city doing the work for the resident will not have to get a permit?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
that was the question. Okay.
Sorry, I
No, that's okay.
misinterpreted.
It was a confusing question. Thank you.
I had two questions that I had directed through the mayor's office. I don't know if you want to address those or if you'd like me to address those now.
I don't have those handy, if you have them with you.
Yeah, sure. So there's been a bit of feedback from residents about perhaps very liberal marking of panels that may be on a line of whether they need to be replaced or not. And maybe we're going through kind of a growth process with identifying what panels need to be included versus what maybe don't necessarily need the attention right now. Can you talk a little bit about that? Can you share a little bit about the discussion that's going on that issue?
Yes, as it relates to any program as you get started, the standard of care that is applied is a evolving process. So the providing a accessible accommodation for the pedestrian pathway, if you will, trying to remove to the extent practical the barriers that may otherwise exist. So it could be defects in the surface, it could be vertical separation between sidewalk panels, taking those elements into account to correct and remedy those to the extent practical. We're attempting to address those through the course of the maintenance program. So as each inspection's occurring in regards to does this warrant if there's like spalling, has it gone to the extent that it prohibits the safe means of pedestrian or those that may have a disability traversing across that. So there's a learning curve associated with it, and we're addressing that as we walk through the inspections.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion for this evening?
And I will say that we're attempting to follow the ADA Pro WAG, which is the public right-of-way accessibility guidelines, as well as ADA, and to the extent practical, addressing those issues as a part of the maintenance program. So set criteria in regards to gaps and deficiencies within the walkway.
Thank you. And do we have, or when should we anticipate budget projections for the third cycle of the sidewalk program?
So that.
Just
for
in
the-
terms of a timeline?
That's a question I'm not sure I can answer right now. We can get back to you on that. I would think it would be next year.
I'm trying to think of the sequence of
I-
whether or
I know,
not we'd be
I
putting
know,
it forward now.
I'm lost between where we are in program 2021 and 2022.
Yes.
I don't want to misspeak. We can get back to you on that. Yeah, they do overlap.
Because if I'm understanding where we kind of are in this sort of program cycle process, we've already seen the projections for the second cost estimates, if I recall correctly.
No, we've
No?
not done inspections yet.
Okay,
So those inspections we just adopted the program area, so those inspections will begin. Once the inspections are done and they take a look at that, that's when the cost estimate would be generated.
okay. So what would the timeline be for that estimate then? Within the year?
We should have that towards the end of this calendar year to the beginning of December, January timeframe.
Okay, all right, perfect. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Mayor. All right, items 3 and 4, our clerk of council is going to kind of walk us through a couple of new tech tools that we have rolled out. Mr. Van Meter, whatever order you'd prefer is fine, and
Sure.
let you take both of them here.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the committee to entertain a few minutes of a public service announcement regarding what we do as far as council office and taking in any videos that you might provide for our new hearing of visitors rule. And then second to that, what we do in terms of our records requests. So as you navigate to Gahanna.gov, you will go to our government tab. This is for the first item under City Council. Get the spinning wheel there. And under important links, you have hearing of visitors, video upload. So once you click that link, you're directed to a form that is straight from the rule that council had passed on remote or via video hearing of visitors. It outlines the requirements, the different parameters around that. Then you fill out information, first, last name, email address, street address, phone number, and then the current agenda item that's to be discussed or in the video. At the bottom of that, you have a tool, video files, and MOV, MP3, and MP4 to upload your video. Once that video is uploaded, our office, council office, receives an email notification that an item has been uploaded, as does the user of that upload, and then we review it from there. So as of date, no one has submitted a video, but this tool is available. Any questions on that item? I did do a test of a new Gahanna water bottle. So we did a 3-minute video, making sure that it complied with at least the length of the video and some audio, and everything is working fine. So we welcome the submissions. The next item is our public records request portal. So again, Gahanna.gov, under the public records link under government, you'll see that a couple options. People, as we're transitioning to this portal, people can still, of course, email us records@gahanna.gov. But here is where we will be responding. So next request, this is a program that's funded between the council office budget as well as the Division of Police. So within this portal, we have a distinction between, is it a request for public records from police specifically or all other departments? And I'll show you where that is. But essentially at this point in the page, you will just go through, enter your request here. We've provided some different tips. We have the ability to directly link certain items, such as if somebody's requesting an agenda or minutes, they start typing minutes in here. This little alert comes up, it automatically redirects them to where we store our minutes on there. Same thing with agenda. We have the ability to add different things as we get more common requests for information that's already out there on our website. Then, as I mentioned, you, as a requester, will select, is it police public records or all other records requests? That then gets filtered either to the police department records technician or to council office. Information that they're willing to provide, again, people do not have to provide a name, they can remain anonymous in their request. And then they would just hit make request. So once that happens, once a request is filed, you get an email acknowledgement, and then we start internally delegating, you know, does this fit more with parks? Is it more public service, et cetera? So with the system, what I've found, it's easier to track requests throughout the departments, because prior to this, we were just utilizing email threads and then an Excel worksheet. With this, it has automated reminders so things don't get lost, that staff is prompted, hey, this request is pending, this needs, you know, a task completed, et cetera. We can also have an audit trail. So during our financial audits, one thing that auditors ask is our public records policy, our public records logs, you know, to make sure we're in compliance with Ohio Sunshine Act. So this is a good tool for that. There's no size limitation on records, so sometimes we would be stuck when we were responding to emails, if it's a video file or something that's very large in size, how to transmit that to the requester in a timely manner. So this definitely helps speed up that process. We also have the ability to redact within the system, one other thing, we have about 50 users on Next Request. That's city staff. I think we went live probably the beginning of August. I've been doing some one-on-one trainings with various staff members, and you know, always encourage people to ask questions. There was a little bit of a learning curve, but overall I think it's pretty straightforward, easy to navigate, and ultimately helps promote transparency here. Anyone have any questions for me?
Just a huge thank you to you, Mr. Van Meter, and I know Deputy Clerk Ripley and Mr. Schultz have really helped get these two tech projects off the ground. So thank you so much for implementing these important pieces.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Next on the agenda is C, items from the Department of Economic Development. Director Strum, I did want to note, thank you for scheduling our next Economic Development Training Series for September 2nd, and thank you to Mr. Harris and Mr. Finley from Bricker to agreeing to come before us.
It's actually after Labor Day, so I believe it's is it
September 12th.
Sorry, you said the 2nd, that's why I want to clarify.
12th, I'm sorry, September 12th.
So, good evening, everyone. First item up for review, as everyone remembers, at the last council meeting, we were requested by the team from the Columbus Aesthetics Plastic Surgery. Did I get caps right? Yes! Took me like 2 months to remember the name of the company fully. To come on back and have a conversation around the term of the agreement. So this evening, we have two members of the team, Kathy Borkowski, who's the COO of CAPS, as well as Nelson Yoder in attendance from Crawford Hoying, who's doing the development process. I would invite them up here for a moment. As a refresher, I'm actually going to move the mics around a little bit, make sure everything's on while doing this now. Now we're set up properly. As a refresher, CAPS is exploring the opportunity of locating an expansion of the project located here in Gahanna. This will be located in the former Penn Zone property at Cherry Way, up near Morse Road in the city's northern area. They're an existing business located up in Upper Arlington. They specialize in plastic surgery augmentation, and I think that I'll let them talk about what their program is and what they actually do. But the ROI numbers have remained the same. Nothing has changed in the project. The only thing that's being requested for consideration by council is the adjustment of the final term. Term being in the initial contract value, there was a 10-year compliance term. They're asking for a reduction of 5, and I'll let them explain it in more detail, but in my conversations with the team, it really focused on amortizing the costs tied to the project in the initial build-out as part of the first lease, and the incentives that kind of all tie together, but I'll let them explain a little bit more in detail. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the team from CAPS.
Good evening. Let's turn this on. Is this on? Good evening. My name is Nelson Yoder with Crawford Hoying Development Partners, a principal with Crawford Hoying. Thank you for entertaining the request this evening. CAPS is a fantastic company that we've had the privilege of working with for the last 5 years on an expansion with them back in 2017 in the city of Upper Arlington initially. They've continued to grow and thrive. It's a great practice combining aesthetics, medical aesthetics, dermatology, plastic surgery, as well as other things like Botox injections, et cetera. They've been on a search for a site on the east side to serve the population over here on the east side of Columbus. It is truly an expansion as they look to grow. We've been meeting with Mr. Strum here over the last couple of months as they've continued to look for opportunities. The side of town, of course, New Albany, Westerville, Gahanna are all great opportunities for them. We are working with them through a 15-year lease, which is a long time in this world. Usually a 10-year lease is what you would see. The discussion with the overall payroll tax incentive, really the importance here is tying the length of the term to the payroll tax requirement. So a 15-year term will be coterminous with the lease term. That's a critical element for CAPS to not create effectively a long-term liability that outruns their investment and their lease in the building. The investment is well over $8 million in a facility that is very obsolete at this point. It was great when it was built in the 90s, but it's definitely run its course. It's going to require a complete renovation of all the electrical, mechanical systems, refitting the interior, and then also redoing the exterior of the building to some extent, new windows, et cetera. It's just new roof. It's at the point where it needs a complete reinvestment in order to become a functional building for this practice. This could be I would think, a best case scenario for Gahanna. This building has just become vacated. It's obsolete, and to have CAPS willing to come in and make this kind of investment in the project is pretty great. So I can answer any questions on the economics of the practice. If you have any questions specifically about CAPS, it'd be great to turn it over to the COO. She could be happy to answer any of those that you may have for us.
Any discussion from council? Questions? Director Strum, did you want to speak a little bit about the terms of the incentive?
Sure.
Specifically as they relate to employee benefits?
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, based upon what was presented to council previously, the only reasonable change in this position is a reduction of the compliance term. So at this point, to reach a level of incentive that was CAPS was looking for in this project, we looked at a 10-year tax credit of sorts. Joanne typically gets mad at me when I call it anything other than that. And in doing so, the city would capture the balance. So in this instance, all issued $12 are being captured by the city. It's a 30% total credit, or about 50% credit against the non-issued 12 funds attributed here in the city of Gahanna. Historically, under the guidelines, we would require a 1.5 to 1 year match. So this would actually have been a 25-year arrangement. We reduced it to 10. In this instance, we're asking for a reduction of 5. My statement, and I've said this to the mayor, and I've said this to Joanne here internally to the city, one of the challenges we have with this program, if I'm being perfectly frank and transparent, is that this was drafted, I think, back in 2006 or 8 initially, and then it was revised in the early teens. A lot of the communities that we've started seeing have a sliding scale based upon payroll estimations and investment levels that allow for lower levels of compliance as long as they're doing higher levels of job creation opportunities. This can be seen, I think, in the city of Columbus. I know City of Westerville has a very aggressive payroll tax consideration program. As we're going through this process and understanding that time is critical to our partners at CAPS and at Crawford Hoying, as we finish this project, if the council moves on this project itself, I'm going to ask that the council consider, I don't want to use the term moratorium because that means Ray's going to come up here and yell at me too, but really put a pause on the program to allow us some time to catch our breath and actually reposition this program to be as effective as possible for the city, as well as make sure it's as appealing as necessary to support some of our infill development opportunities. As a reminder, the incentive as it's structured today, projects that are not receiving any other type of public incentivization, so think CRA tax credits or TIF dollars, are only eligible for this. If they have TIF or CRA inclusions, they are not eligible for this. So I like that language, quite frankly, but I think being mindful of how projects move forward and the rapidness that they move forward with, trying to reevaluate the way we judge these projects, it's fairly arbitrary to have a 1.5 to 1 ratio on it. So my office actually is in favor of the project as it stands today. I'm looking through a lens of, and actually I got challenged by one of the council members at the last meeting, does the deal make sense? Does the deal make sense for the city of Gahanna? And I can emphatically say, from my position as economic development director, yes. Yes, the deal makes sense for us. We're creating high-paying medical jobs related to the opportunities. I'll let Ms. Borkowski speak to any benefits or fringe areas that they may have for the employees. But from a wage standpoint for the city and what we're generating out of this project, it makes a heck of a lot of sense for us, especially when it comes to what Mr. Yoder noted a moment ago. Taking an existing vacant building, that is going to be a very challenging adaptive reuse and backfilling, which is a high yield opportunity for the city. So,
And just to clarify, we're not talking about altering the term during which the credit will be refunded.
correct. It's just the compliance on the backside.
It's just the 5 years that follows.
That is correct. It is the compliance period on the backside. A reduction of a 10-year proposed to a 5-year.
Thank you.
Where is the building? I know it says Cherry Way, but where?
Oh, it's the former Penzone
Okay, that's right. Thank you.
Spa and Salon building on Cherry Way. My apologies.
Okay, I know exactly where it's in. Thank you. Never mind, I need that.
Just from CAP's perspective, we just wanted to say that we are excited to come to Gahanna and hope that this works with this incentive program because we have a lot of employees and we are intending to grow what we're successful at in Upper Arlington, in Gahanna with our medical practice of dermatology, plastic surgery, and ancillary services. So we're excited to come to Gahanna. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Weaver?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Borkowski and Mr. Yoder for being here this evening. I do appreciate it. And for adding some more clarification and the human touch to everything. But I also want to be sure to thank Director Strum for all of your efforts and the work that you do to bring businesses here to the city and making sure that we understand what we're looking at when we move something forward and just know that your recommendations, I take them to heart. I'm sure my colleagues do too. So appreciate all your efforts on this.
And again, I appreciate that, Councilman, and I'll just reiterate, I think this is a win-win across the board for the city, but I will also be mindful to say that as we're going forward, especially in this accelerated business climate that we're experiencing right now, taking a breath with this program in particular and making sure that it is competitive and effective for what the city is looking for in the future will be a key strategy for us moving forward.
Director Strum, one of the things that was important to me, what we spoke about during the Incentive Advisory Board, was making sure that employees, and I just being clear, I understand CAPS already pays competitive wages and is a competitive employer and certainly wants to attract and retain great talent. But ensuring that in creating an income tax refund to CAPS, that employee benefits are going to be provided at a competitive rate. And if either you or the CEO want to speak to that, I'd be happy to make sure that's part of the record.
Can you lean into your microphone?
Sure, absolutely. In terms of employee benefits, all of our employee benefits are paid for at 90% in terms of their health, And is that what you mean in terms of fringe benefits?
Correct. Health insurance,
Dental,
retirement,
vision.
that type of thing.
Retirement is matched at 3%, so we are very competitive in that respect as an employer.
Thank you. And that was also incorporated in the letter, I think, between the city
Correct,
and
it was.
and CAPS. All right. Thank you. All right. I'll just echo Mr. Weaver's comments. You know, I understand not wanting to extend the term of this agreement beyond the 15-year lease, and thank you for bringing that to light. So I do understand the business calculus in that decision. And I think that overall this, I'm excited to add these jobs. I'm excited to add this facility. And as you mentioned, we're grateful that we'll see that particular building renovated in an updated and in a meaningful way. So thank you. It's important to me too that there's no abatement. I just want to say it again. There are no abatements on this property. There are no other incentives associated with this project. This is it. So
That is absolutely correct.
I am happy that we will have no issues with property tax being generated to support our excellent school district as well. So thank you.
Is this going to be on regular agenda, then I take it for final passage? Is that okay?
Yes. It'll be back on for, I think, second reading and adoption on the 6th.
Yes,
With-
so
with the
will this
amended language?
require an amendment?
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys need amended here. I sent over a sample draft to Jeremy prior to the meeting, kind of presuming a couple things in this conversation, but certainly didn't want to make a complete assumption. So Jeremy, you should have a draft in your inbox reflective of the 30% total credit against the city's income tax, making sure that the issued $12 are remaining whole, and it's 50% credit against the balance, with the compliance period of 15 years instead of the 20, as noted in that original draft document that was on the council agenda for this evening.
We'll need to do that amendment prior to taking a vote on the
Okay.
6th. So we cannot take a vote here at this meeting, but
Understood, but I just want to make sure you knew that it was we've already got it in flight for you.
excellent. Thank you.
I just sent it out too.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
But we'll need to orally amend the legislation because it's already gone through first reading.
Absolutely.
Yes, okay.
You guys are good. Thank you all.
Thank you. All right, Director Strum, item ordinance 0054-2022.
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to ask, while I'm giving the summary, I'll ask that Mr. Bob Behall and Mr. Sean McCarter join me up here at the podium as well. Mr. Behall represents Fed One in this transaction. Mr. McCarter actually represents the city of Gahanna. Yeah, whatever you want. No one wants to sit next to Chief Spence. It's fine. I wouldn't either. I like you, buddy. So this evening, what we have before you is a related item to the State Infrastructure Bank ordinance that was passed by council maybe 6 weeks ago as a refresher on the whole. Late last year, this body approved a development agreement tied to the expansion of ADB Safegate here in the city of Gahanna. As part of that project, it was considered extension of Tech Center Drive to service the property as a public improvement. The city was able to obtain dollars associated for the project from various state agencies, specifically ODOD, Ohio Department of Development, and their 629 program, as well as Ohio Department of Transportation and their Jobs and Commerce program. This body previously took up an action about, I think, 6 weeks ago around the State Infrastructure Bank. What we've experienced since those items were authorized has been an upsizing of infrastructure tied to the project to meet redundancy needs for the city, as well as an increased cost tied to inflation, various construction variabilities that have been tied to the project. And so we were going to enter into an arrangement to introduce a SIB loan in which Fed One, the contractor in this case, would guarantee that project through a personal line of credit by the owner of the group. Unfortunately, since that item was taken up by this body, the principal at Fed One has passed away unexpectedly. What you have before you at this point is a revised construction and loan agreement that outlines, from a high-level standpoint, a security deposit and promissory note tied to an surety bond. I'll let the lawyers go through some more details on it, but this is something that was worked through by Cities Council as well as Fed One Council to kind of make it make sense. Unfortunately, because we lost time over the last 4 to 6 weeks following Mr. Biondi's passing. I'm asking for a waiver and emergency on this as well for 2 principal reasons. One, from a logistical standpoint, asphalt plants will be closing here very shortly if we don't start moving on this item. And secondly, and most importantly, it's a public safety issue. If this building were to open without the proper access road, the level of issue potentially with school buses and truck traffic up there would be inconceivable, quite frankly. I think it would put a significant damper on public safety in the area. So that's why those items are on there. With me this evening, as I mentioned, we have Mr. Bob Behall representing Fed 1 and Sean McCarter to kind of walk through some of the nuts and bolts of the agreement and answer more questions because they are much more intelligent than I am as it relates to the legal agreement before you. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sean and Bob.
Good evening. What we needed to work with here was assisting the developer with these expanded costs that came into play, roughly potentially $1 million. And, you know, Nate, as he discussed, had secured some, as of the fall, assistance on this with the grants. There's some TIF money as well. One of the cost increases was to take a water line from an 8-inch to a 6-inch line. 16-inch line. Yes, to a 16-inch line. The benefit of that is that you've increased your pressure, your looping of your system. It serves a lot. It helps serve a lot of other areas. That cost, pursuant to this agreement, is being funded at $85,100, which is the cost of the line itself, and that is based on an engineer's certification of cost. That's water fund money to pay for that oversized line to benefit others. The other component to this was to work to come up with a loan issue, and that's the SIB loan. But it's to be repaid, those monies, by the developer. We've had to go through a few different machinations. The developer's lender didn't do what we thought they would do, and a few other things. And the issue is to protect the city on that loan, secure the city. If you can't pay me, secure me. And in order to do that, an affiliated entity is willing to put up a cash security deposit of $1.5 million. That's the total you could draw on the SIB loan. The agreement is set up that they wouldn't incur any costs or be permitted to anything above 1.5. If for some reason there's a necessity, they'd come back to you. The expectation is 1.5 is with contingency funds, so you know that you could build it for 1.3, but with contingencies 1.5. Then there's let's call them credits. You know, the ability to get the grant money. Well, the grant money is reimbursement money. And you've got to perform things and do things, and a lot of that falls to the developer. So, you know, there's potentially risk that the developer fails to perform and the grant money doesn't come through. And then, but if the grant money comes through, then the amount of the loan gets reduced because the grant money's come through. Then there's the city money, the TIF money, et cetera, et cetera. At the end of the day, this probably ends up at $800,000 as the amount due. When we get to the end of the day and it's all in, then the city decides how much it's received from the other sources, subtracts that from any of the money that was lent, and let's, just for discussion purposes, again, say it comes out to $800,000 is still unpaid. You're holding 1.5 million of money put up by an affiliated entity of the developer. You also will have to calculate the payoff of the SIB loan. The hold on the SIB loan has to be 37 months. It's bonded money. But, you know, the payoff will be known at whatever time this happens. The city would refund, if you will, from the deposit whatever it doesn't need to pay all obligations. So let's say it's $700,000. At that point, $700,000 goes back to the developer's entity that helped this. The city keeps the $800,000 and the city's paid in full. So the city's holding its own it's holding cash that it controls as security for this, and the cash is the maximum amount that can be drawn on the SIB loan, plus there's these grants that have to be processed through their reimbursement, plus the city's committed some TIF money, plus the city's committed some water money. We worked, Bob and I and Ray, worked with some different scenarios as to how to secure this city. We'd proposed a mortgage at first. That wouldn't fly with the bank. We asked for a letter of credit. The bank couldn't get their head around it, apparently. So ultimately, the developer, through a related entity, is essentially putting up a cash bond. They're giving the city cash to hold to protect the city from any default by the developer or any unexpected performance on these other programs. And the agreement provides that the developer then takes this project forward. It's road, water, sewer, and some stormwater, right?
Correct.
That's what's involved in this project with the extension of Tech Center Drive.
And I'll just add to that. Thank you, Sean. And Madam Chair, I'm Bob Behall. I'm the attorney for Science One LLC, which is the developer. And we had some quite a few unforeseen circumstances arise with the delay in time that it just took to get things together, and the associated increase in costs that occurred as a result of the delay, which have affected this job in terms of cost of materials, labor, all those things, and the fact that we realized that the size of the job needed to be increased in order to meet the appropriate standards. We also have the unfortunate occurrence of Bob Biondi, who is the managing member of Science One, was in Montana hiking and had a fall, and he fell like 300 feet down a chasm and died instantaneously. And of course, everybody that's involved here is shocked because we deal with him on a daily basis, and was a tremendous guy. So we're all very sad about that, but we have to keep moving forward because we all want ADB to get into this building on a timetable that meets their requirements. We think they're important to keep them operating in Gahanna. We also think that there is definitely a safety issue involved here because of the way Tech Center Drive abuts the building and how the traffic is going to be funneled in and out. And we're interested for the safety ADB employees, but also for the citizens of Gahanna. And likewise, we have the problem of they only process asphalt for a certain amount of time until it gets too cold, and you're looking about mid-December for that. And we'd very much like to get the road in and done, and we need to also go through the bidding process and let it for bid, so that we've got work to do here. And I want to just say on the side here that without Director Strum and Mayor Jadwin and also Ray Malarski, who's been a lawyer about as long as I've been a lawyer, which is too long, I might add, Ray, this could never have gotten done because we ran into problems. When you're financing a project of this size, the banks, the middle-sized banks that are usually involved in our deals, bring on other banks to co-lend with them. Well, now you have 3 committees, 3 boards that you have to deal with, and every bank, of course, wants to raise 67 issues because they have lawyers and other people that are making life difficult for us. So we have worked our way through that, and really the ability of the affiliated entity, which is Fed One and their owners, they were able to come up with this idea of let's bypass the banks, let's just put the cash on deposit with the city, and we went through a process of working that agreement out so that the cash is there. The cash will be there until the job is completed and all the numbers are in. We know what the grants are. We know what the SID loan balance due is, and we can get this the money paid then immediately to Gahanna. Now Gahanna's going to have to wait, I think, 37 months to pay it back, but then the remaining monies will be returned if there are remaining monies, and there should be some. So we're trying to make this as easy as possible, and I think we were able to do so thanks to the hard work of these folks here. So I would ask for your approval and approval on an emergency basis, because we need to get this moving forward from a safety and a exigency perspective. I appreciate your attention.
Director Strom?
Sure. I wanted to distill one key item out of this, and I think I saw a lot of faces. I've been working with you fine folks for a year plus now, so you don't have poker faces with me. To distill this down to the heart of the matter, we have an engineer's estimate that just puts this project just a hair under $1.5 million. The security deposit covers the entire cost of the project, so that if no grant monies, if no TIF monies, if nothing happened, we still had coverage tied to this construction project. All responsibilities for public compliance, all bidding requirements, domestic steel utilization, labor, everything is then funneled from the city to Science One as a subrecipient. If they do not pass the sniff test with non-discrimination, if they do not pass the bidding requirements, we're the state of Ohio, they become ineligible for reimbursement. Those monies are then set aside and eaten. That's why we did the maximum value tied to the construction. I can't emphasize this enough. There is a zero exposure to the general fund tied to this agreement. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Mr. Renner?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. I look backwards and in time a little bit, and forgive me, but the name of your corporation, it was bugging me. I was like, was Science One? Did we do something? Well, we did. In 2021, we passed a CRA and a developers agreement for the development that you're doing. Mm-hmm. And now, fast forward in time, your entity is putting up $1.5 million to keep this project going, and you worked out an agreement to where the monies, as just Director Strom had just itemized, there's no exposure to the city. What's not to like about this? I am really grateful and thankful for the team effort that you did, that your corporation, sir, even though, we gave the CRA, a tax abatement, sure, you've turned around and you're turning something really good, and you're helping us out. So
thank you. Well,
really appreciate this.
Appreciate the CRA in the first place, but I got to give a lot of credit to the deceased Mr. Biondi, who wanted to do whatever it took to make this work. So I appreciate your comments very much on his behalf.
You're a model corporation that I wish that others would actually exemplify, so thank you.
I wish all my clients were like this, believe me.
I wish all my deals were like this.
Yeah, no, I understand that, believe me.
It's unfortunate that the death.
Yeah, yeah.
Mrs. McGregor?
I just want to thank you because lots have been lot of hurdles here, but there was somebody that got over all the hurdles, and I really appreciate that. there always has to be one person that can see the deadlines, make the deadlines, get the hurdles, get over the hurdles, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
very much.
Any other comments? I'll just echo my colleagues, Mr. Behal, Mr. Carter, Director Strum. You can tell that you problem solved your way through this and after quite a few obstacles, and so thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So this will be on for a first reading with waiver and adoption at the September 6th meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to items D, under Section D, items from the Department of Finance. We have one item, Ordinance 0049-2022, a supplemental appropriation with a waiver of second reading for the Workers' Compensation Self-Insurance Fund. Director Burry?
Yes, good evening. So our self-insurance fund, we are self-insured for workers' compensation, which means we identify a percentage of payroll to charge ourselves in order to fund our claims, rather than the claims being paid by the Bureau of Workers' Comp. We do use a third party to process those. So during 2022, to come up with what our claims experience might be, we look at historical claims and then also the claims that we know that are outstanding. As we moved into 2022, we were under the impression that our one large claimant would fall off, but due to unforeseen circumstances, that claim remains open. And then our typical claims that we normally experience, we're just having more of those this year. So we are still good on our reserve balance. We have about 5 years of reserve left based on claims experience. And then we'll look at 2023 to see if that percentage needs to be increased based on what we see coming down the pike. So for 2022, we do need a supplemental appropriation for $90,000 to the self-insurance workers' claim account. And we're also requesting waiver because we do have our August claims coming in and want to ensure we have enough coverage to cover those.
Thank you, Director Burry. Any discussion from council? All right, it'll be on for first reading with waiver and adoption on September 6th. The next item is under Section E, items from the mayor's office. There is one ordinance that we have received a paper copy of, and this is regarding the establishment of separate departments for public service and engineering with an amendment to the charter. Mayor?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I was actually just speaking with the city attorney about this, and this is my apologies on this. Given the deals that we were working on Friday and trying to make sure that we had everything ready to go with council for today, I did not get my report to the clerk of council in time. And just speaking now with Mr. Malarski, I think we both would feel more comfortable just to make sure that we have all of our I's dotted and our T's crossed if we just move this to September 12th so that it could be attached as an agenda item. This actually is an item that I have discussed with council previously. It's about the separation of public service and engineering and just taking the official step to do that. No amendment to charter. This has to deal with the charter language and clarifying actually the charter language that's there in terms of compliance with that. So.
Okay.
But if with your indulgence, I would feel more comfortable, I think, as Mr. Malarski would, if we just move this to the 12th.
All right, thank you. We'll have this item on the agenda for Committee of the Whole on September the 12th.
Thank you.
Under Section F, we have items from the Department of Public Service and Engineering. Director Crawford, we have 4 items up for discussion tonight.
Yes, good evening. I'll be tackling the first item for you this evening. So the first one is a request to enter into contract with American Rock Salt Company, LLC, for the purchase of our road salt for the 2022 and 2023 winter season. So as a brief recap, we are members of the SWAP 4G organization, which cooperatively purchases road salt each winter season. On July 14th, bids were opened for this new season and were reviewed. The lowest and best bidder for Gahanna salt needs is American Rock Salt with a bid price of $71.84 per ton with a $0 per ton piling charge. I do want to note that this is about 36% higher than the previous year's salt prices, and that's due to a handful of factors, inflation, gas prices, availability of salt. If you view salt prices over the years, they do fluctuate very heavily. They are heavily dependent also on the amount of salt used in previous winters. And if you all remember, we had a couple pretty heavy winters this last year and the year before. So we are respectfully requesting legislation to enter into contract with American Rock Salt Company, LLC. And we do have funds appropriated for purchase of salt.
Any discussion on ordinance 0051-2022? All right, we'll put this on for first reading on the 6th and then consent at the meeting after that. Okay, thank you. 0052-2022 regarding Cherry Road restabilization.
So I'll take this one. Is this mic on?
Yes, Director.
Okay, so you can hear.
Thank you.
All right, so we're requesting a authorization ordinance to enter into contract, for the mayor to enter into contract with the Ryder Company for slope stabilization along Cherry Bottom Road. This will be in 2 locations. One area is south of Academy Park, the entrance there, and the other location is just north of US 62 in Cherry Bottom, near Springbrook and the McKenna Creek. There's some slope stabilization that needs to occur in that area. We plan on putting in some sheet piling and rock channel to stabilize the slopes in that area. We advertised for bids on July 14th and the 21st, and bids were open on July 29th. We received 3 bids. The Ryder Company was the lowest and responsive bidder. We're requesting to enter into contract with a 10% contingency in the amount of $384,114. As a side note, it's my understanding that we are receiving grant funds from Ohio Public Works Commission in the amount of just around $200,000, if my memory serves me correctly. So that will go in to reduce the cost on the overall project. Any questions?
Could you just describe a little bit about what the sheet pile retaining wall will look like and what it does? Maybe if you could just kind of give a 101 explanation.
So the sheet piling, that will be vibrated into the existing embankment to hold back the earthen material below or adjacent to the roadway offset. And then the stabilization will be up on the backside of that. So there should be very limited exposure to the sheet piling because that's driven into the ground to protect the soil from eroding away.
I will add there is existing sheet piling out on Cherry Bottom by Springbrook. This is the next section up, so if you drive out there, it's unlikely that you'll be able to see it. It does hide into the banks as it reestablishes after the work's done. One other item is we are requesting that this is a waiver.
Any other questions or discussion on this item? Are we good with consent on this item? All right, so on the consent agenda for waiver and adoption on the 6th.
The next item, as we're speaking related to grants, the upcoming OPWC grant application round is here upon us this fall. We're anticipating submitting a grant application for the Taylor Station Claycraft Road intersection, and we're seeking authorization resolution to allow the mayor and staff to submit that application on behalf of the city.
Excellent. Thank you for pursuing that. Any other discussion? Consent agenda? All right. And the last item, gentlemen?
Last item is related to a requested code change to 52106 as it relates to curbs and gutters. Historically, within the street maintenance and street reconstruction programs, the city has taken on responsibility for repair and maintenance of curbs and gutters. Within this section, it calls for that to otherwise be the property owner's maintenance, so we're attempting to clear up this section of code to make that clear to be city responsibility.
Making it clear that it's the owner's responsibility.
No, that it's the city's responsibility to maintain curbs and gutters.
If I could, when we adopted Chapter 521 for we updated the sidewalk code, 52106B placed responsibility for maintaining curbs and curb gutters on the homeowner. This would change that responsibility and remove that responsibility from the homeowners onto the city. Essentially because if people are going to be doing work in the street, we would prefer to be the ones doing that and obviously alleviating that financial burden from homeowners as well.
I see. So the obligation falls to the homeowner to keep him free from obstruction, but that the sidewalks and approaches or aprons would be the responsibility of the homeowner for repair.
Correct.
I understand. Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Mrs. McGregor?
I was just saying that this really makes sense because if every homeowner was responsible, I mean, they might get it level, they might not. This guy might have it an inch higher and then an inch lower, and then the water wouldn't flow. And so it really makes sense to have somebody do it as with a continuous flow of water in mind. That it has to.
Thank you. Was there waiver requested on this or just standard? It looks like it's just standard.
I don't have it pulled up, but I thought that we had requested waiver in emergency so that we do have, I know some homes right now that are subject of code enforcement violations. Was that not asked for? I don't have it pulled up in front of me. All right, that's fine then.
Okay.
I think as long as we know that it's moving forward, we can communicate with residents that this is in the pipeline.
Fantastic. So if we're good with it, then first reading on the 6th, and then no need to come back and consent agenda for the second reading.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you. All right. Next, we have 2 items from the Department of Administrative Services. Director Vollmer and Mr. Schultz.
We're going to shuffle some seats. I'm going to start while Mr. Schultz gets into position, if that's all right with you, Madam Chair. So this is the return of the purchase agreement and bond legislation with regard to 825 Tech Center Drive. This evening is the 5th public discussion that we've had with council on this project involving potential purchase of 825 Tech Center Drive. We have discussed at length the various assessments that were done. We've talked about the public workshops. We've talked about the presentation last fall. Those were the whats, and I'm not going to revisit the whats. I think it's important for us tonight to focus and recenter on the why we are having this discussion around 825 Tech Center Drive. The reason we began to explore 825 Tech Center Drive and why we are considering it today was because we were trying to solve a problem. That problem was the condition of the police headquarters that's situated right across the street. It is a building that has really been functionally obsolete for decades. The need for a new PD building has been in our capital needs assessments, especially for those of you council members who have been around for a long time. It's been in our capital needs assessment for about the last 15 years. Year after year after year, we have included that in our CNAs as something that needed to be addressed. That building is now to the point that it is in a condition where we can no longer wait to address those problems. The building, as I said, is functionally obsolete, but it's also inadequate to meet the operational needs of our officers. So it was through our efforts in trying to find an economical solution to how we were going to solve that problem that we identified the opportunity at 825 Tech Center Drive. But that facility not only, as it turns out, provides a solution for our police headquarters, but it also solves long-term needs with regard to City Hall and the Senior Center. And it really sets us up for success with those 3 facilities for the next 20, 30, 40 years and more. And it does so in the most cost-effective manner possible. One of the questions we have heard as we have continued to share information with the public on this is, what does this do to my taxes? I've said it before here, I will say it again. It does absolutely nothing to your taxes. There will be no new taxes. Issue 12 was passed in May of 2019. It is not a new issue, it's an old issue. Issue 12 was passed in May of 2019, and it was specifically passed for the purpose of helping us to address deferred maintenance on a litany of projects. Facilities were one of those. So again, we'll answer that question. There will be no impact on taxes. But we did have some other questions that have been coming up. I know several council members as well have shared some questions with us. Thank you very much for doing so. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Schultz so that he can do a brief presentation on some of the types of questions we've been receiving.
Yep. So not much from me tonight. I know you're all thankful for that, so that's good. So as the mayor indicated, first thing we're going to go over real quick before we get to some of the questions is just the whole public engagement sessions that we've had. I'm going to make note that since July 20th, the day in which we had our first town hall on this particular project, 33 days have passed. So a lot has happened in 33 days. A lot has happened in 33 days. As you guys also know, when we were before you guys in January and February with those 4 workshops, we've been now talking about facilities in earnest for better than 8 months. But since July 20th, we've done, like the mayor said, 5 council presentations, whether it's committee to the whole, presentations before council, so on and so forth. There'll be one more coming up on September 6th, which is will be this 3rd public hearing and the 2nd reading of the ordinances for the purchase and sale agreement and the short-term note issuance. We've done 2 public hearings. Again, we will have done a 3rd on September 6th. But the one part that you guys haven't necessarily seen, I know some of you have even been part of these meetings, but we've done 5 different community presentations. We did the town hall, which we already talked about, but we've been before Planning Commission, we've been before the CIC, we've been before the Rotary, and we've been before the Senior Center as late as last Friday. We are actually going to be giving a 6th presentation before the Civic Association that Chief holds on a monthly basis this coming Thursday. We've had 3 print media articles by This Week News, one with the overall announcement from our July 20th presentation. I forget exactly what the second one was, and then the third one was last week where the newspaper posted an article about the 3rd public hearing, and I believe the headline was City Makes Last Call for Public Input on this particular project. We've done over 12 social media posts, not necessarily, when that says 12 social media posts, that's not 12 social media posts by us, the city specifically, but that also includes the social media posts that have been done by community residents, people who are engaged in their government and have actually shared some of the materials that we've put out with others. And there are also obviously more to come, and we'll continue to publicize that as, or post those engagements as we lead up to the 3rd public hearing on the 6th. Those were shared 22 different times. I would say that engagement on those posts has been fairly positive. I guess that's how I would describe it. Although I will also recognize the fact that the engagement there has been somewhat limited at the same time. I think the most encouraging thing that I've seen is anybody who that citizens inside of the community are actually answering questions based on the materials that we've been putting out before them. Questions that the mayor just answered as far as like what's the impact to my taxes. We actually have people in the community who are answering those questions on our behalf, again, based on either videos or the information that's on our website. The litany of information that's out there at this particular point in time based on the things that we've been doing over the last 33 days. And I'll end this particular slide with, the things that all of those materials are on our website. Each and every public session that we've done, all of the PowerPoint presentations, the video is posted there. Each public session is also posted there, making it easy for residents and community members alike to go to the website and find information about this particular project. So As the mayor indicated, we're going to answer a couple questions now, ones that you have asked, and then at the backside of this, we'll have the opportunity to ask some more questions. So as the mayor indicated, and I think she was quite clear about how this project was going to be paid, that is the biggest question that we get. This project is going to be paid, and I'll reiterate what she said just a couple minutes ago. This project is going to be paid out of existing issue $12. I'll also make the note that this project will in part be funded by other means and mechanisms that the city currently has at its disposal. Things like TIF dollars, things like we'll pursue certain grant opportunities that we have in order to shrink that debt service from the $61 million project that it is, and reduce that debt service and the impact to issue $12. I think that's probably the biggest point is that we have a $61 million budget, but that does not necessarily mean that we have a $61 million debt service that we'll be asking you folks for after we get design and construction estimates done, if it's the will to buy the building here on September 6th. And again, we'll go revisit these. I'll go through them real quick, and then we can revisit them if you guys have follow-ups. So the second biggest question that we get is what happens to this particular piece of property here, these three buildings and this 5.5 acres on the corner of South Hamilton and Rocky Fork. And the answer there, and the answer that we'd be giving, and I think it's the right one, is that we really don't know at this particular point in time. We know that we have a $4.8 million appraisal that's been done on this particular piece of property, and we know that there's a myriad of options that we have. We can work with the school district as an example. The next question actually deals with that. We could sell it as a commercial for commercial development. Again, there's a whole host of options, but we don't necessarily know which of those options to pursue until we know that we're actually going to be moving and we actually have a project down the road. I'll also note that it's not necessarily a decision that needs to be made quickly because of the timeline that we're dealing with, right? We're dealing with a timeline that is about an 8 to 9 month design process and then a construction process thereafter. So you're looking at 18 to 24 months that we still need to function inside of this building before actually vacating the premises and moving off of it. So it's kind of like moving out of your house, right? You close and you might stay there for a week, but you don't close and stay there for 2 years. So decisions on this particular property are yet to come. I believe the third question, I should know the order that I put them in. How have we worked with the school district regarding this particular property, 200 South Hamilton and Clark Hall? And with that, I'm turning this over to the mayor for that answer.
Sure. Thank you, Kevin. We have had extensive conversations with schools as we have moved forward on this project. I will share that one of the first conversations we had occurred early on in my administration, literally within, I think, 3 weeks, when I sat down with a school board member and discussed the issue of, hey, you're getting to work on this high school project, should we have a conversation? I will share at that time, the schools really were already full steam ahead with their high school project. Compare that to us at the time, we had nothing in the pipeline, didn't know what we were going to do, hadn't even completed an assessment. There were concerns that timelines would not align. As we know, the schools have a very tight timeline for their project that they're working on. So there were concerns that we would not be able to meet the timeline that the school would need in order to make those puzzle pieces fit together. Obviously, if we had known then what we know now, had we known about this opportunity that would present itself at 825 Tech Center Drive, that conversation might have looked a little different. But at the time, the concerns were valid. As we continued to work on the assessments ourselves in subsequent months, part of that assessment work included identifying potential locations for a police headquarters, for a city hall. During that evaluation process, Clark Hall surfaced as an ideal location for City Hall. That led us to then explore conversations with the schools around Clark Hall. And I think Kevin, I believe we had several months worth of conversations that included tours of that facility, meeting with then Superintendent Barrett, and really just comparing square footage needs, et cetera. Ultimately, that did not work out. The schools very much wanted to keep their preschool in Clark Hall. Having a preschool and mayor's court on the same floor aren't necessarily compatible needs and compatible uses with that. Plus, it also took away from the square footage that we would have needed for City Hall. So that option no longer became a viable one. At this time, both the city with our facility project now and the schools with where they are on their high school project are very focused on those individual projects. I will share that I am meeting monthly with the superintendent, as I did with Mr. Barrett. We also will now begin quarterly meetings between myself, Council President Renner, our school liaison, Ms. Bowers, and then the school board president, Ms. Pickle-Antonio, Dr. Deagle, and their council school board liaison, I believe, Ms. Mooring. Obviously, we'll continue to have conversations, and we'll continue to discuss what opportunities are. If there's, as I said, we are both on individual paths with our projects. If there's an opportunity where those paths intersect and there's a crossroads between this project and this property and what they're able to do, we will pursue and explore those discussions. Right now, there's not really much of an opportunity for us to pursue that. And I will say also, until we actually know what we're doing with 825 Tech Center Drive, whether we are going to move forward or whether we're going to stay here, it really is kind of putting the cart before the horse to have a conversation around, with the school's interest with this. Once we know, yes, we will be moving with 825 Tech Center Drive, then certainly that opens the door to further, more serious conversations. But right now, I think both sides, the city and the schools, are focused on their individual projects. I also, Kevin, just give me another PS on this, because some of the questions that we have seen sometimes intermingle the city and the school district. It is important for residents to understand the school district and the city of Gahanna are two separate and distinct legal entities. We are two separate and distinct political subdivisions. The schools are funded by property tax. The city is funded by income tax. We've talked before about how they're run by the school board and a superintendent. We have the mayor and city council and city attorney. We do not control one another. And I think that's very important for our residents to remember and understand, because I think there is some confusion with confusing this project with the high school project next door. They're not related. And one does not have an impact on the other with regard to financing, decision-making, et cetera. So I just want to make sure that we are clear to our residents on that. But to answer the question, long and short, we've had extensive conversations with the schools. Not much opportunity at this time, but that's not to say that there couldn't be an opportunity down the road.
So these are a couple of questions similar or related to this particular piece of property, but are there special requirements for the sale of city property? The short answer there is yes, there are. Basically, it's what is referred to as like the reverse bid, right? Instead of taking the low bid like you guys have heard tonight, we basically take the high bid for this. We would take the high bid for this particular piece of property as one potential option that we would have. You guys, council has to authorize us to actually go and sell this particular piece of property, and therefore you guys actually, you guys issue that bid allowance. We go out, market the property, and then at some particular point we open the bids and it gets sold to the highest person or highest bidder. There are other options that involve the CIC, but this is one of the easiest and best legal options, or first and foremost legal option that we would have in general terms. So, sorry, Nate. Sorry. The next question is, how will a future relocation potentially impact police response time? And with that, I'll turn it over to Chief.
We receive this quite often. First and foremost, I think we spoke about this a number of times going back to the workshops. There's really no perfect location anywhere in Gahanna for a police facility. Every location has its own unique challenges. What I would say is the location really isn't as crucial as police staffing. Our officers are not tethered to our headquarters building from a perspective of how we do our deployments. Our officers constantly circulating the city. So staffing bears more of an issue related to our ability to respond to crimes in progress than where we are physically located. There are challenges with this particular site. One, its size. Two, its proximity to Hamilton Road. And three, while it may look as being an opportunity, being so close to the high school, it actually serves as a detriment in terms of both pedestrian and vehicular traffic congestion, our ability to respond when there are situations. I can tell you that this, as I mentioned before, this construction project is going to have significant impact on Gahanna. It's going to have a significant impact on traffic congestion. It's going to have impact on our ability to do our jobs here, to keep City Hall functioning. I look back, and although I never want to have a repeat of the teacher strike, we're dealing with one in the city of Columbus right now. When the teachers were on strike, that activity, while certainly permissible and certainly something that was expected, did impact our ability to respond because there was so much congestion related to the picketers, close proximity to our building. They were in our lanes of travel. It became very problematic given the number of issues related to the teacher strike. So I think as we've spoken about this facility, it's much more conducive to public safety operations. It is strategically located next to several avenues of travel. It gives us easy access to I-270, which gives us both north and south access to areas of the city. And it also provides a number of strategic and tactical advantages to its positioning. Also allows us to keep that facility secure in a number of ways.
And the last question before we get into some of additional questions that you guys might have is, but what inspections have been conducted on the 825 property? So MCP was instrumental in telling us or guiding us as to which inspections we should be doing on this particular facility in order to, verify its purchase. And they basically said you're basically looking at two big components. One is the roof. You need to know what its structural qualities are, and then you also need to know what its age is. And then the second are the mechanicals inside of the building. When they came back and they said that the roof, the property owner indicated to them that the roof was at its end of life, and so was the HVAC system. They basically said there's no sense inspecting things that you're going to plan on replacing during the renovation project. So therefore, that $61 million calls for a complete roof replacement and a complete replacement of the HVAC system. So that takes the two largest inspections out of the mix in order to verify not verify, but to inspect prior to purchasing the building. The second thing is that I know that the Terracon company that is located off of Morrison Road, they gave us a complimentary report. It's, I'm not exactly sure how many pages it is. I actually have it pulled up here in case there was any specific questions about it. It's an 11-page report. It talks about some general things that you would look for in a project like this. One of the things that it recommends, I think, in the first couple paragraphs is to conduct a phase 1 environmental assessment of the site itself. A phase 1 environmental assessment does things like it describes the site and the nearby properties, the uses of the historical uses of the property. The environmental records are reviewed, for example, things like wetlands inventories, natural habitat is inventoried. A lot of things that I will say, or I'll point out right now, that are not necessarily germane to this particular developed site at this time. Physical records are reviewed. The historical records are reviewed. Are there any historical sites located on this particular piece of property that might need to be protected? Are there archaeological sites on this particular site that might also need to be protected? Regulatory agencies and their records are reviewed. Interviews are conducted with property owners and such. And then ultimately, site recommendations are made. There were two previously conducted environmental phase 1 assessments done on this particular property, one in 2016, September of 2016, and one in August of 2018. And both reports basically conclude the same thing, which is the assessment has revealed, and this is actually quoting the 2016 report, and similar verbiage is in the 2018 report, but the assessment has revealed no evidence of recognized environmental conditions issued in connection with the subject property, and that basically is at the backside of the executive summary of that report. In reading those things, it has been determined by us in this particular group here that for a report that's only 4 years old, do we need to spend money and go and have a second environmental assessment, or a third one, I would conclude, done on this particular piece of property, when one of the things in the Tarragon report is that we need to be cognizant of, Nate can probably tell me what the species was, but Indian bats? Indiana bats. And the habitats that they may actually be inhabiting in the woodlot behind this particular piece of property. We are not going to be the owners of this particular piece of property at this particular point in time, so therefore there would be no impact to the Indiana bats as they were out back of our building. There could be some potential Indiana bats inside of the cracks and crevices of the building, but I think that during renovation we would take care of those types of issues and challenges that we might come up with. It also mentioned some issues or challenges with maybe some hydric soils located on the particular property. But again, these previous 2 environmental phase 1 assessments have determined that there are no environmental conditions that needed to be taken into consideration previously. So we would work under the same assumption that 4 years later that there are still no environmental considerations that have auto-magically popped up on this particular site at this particular point in time. Anything else that the report indicated as far as geotechnical services or stuff like that would go, that is all in the architectural and engineering RFP that went out. So that work would be done as part of the renovation and expansion project. So with that, that is the last question I have. Oh, I did want to actually, I forgot something on the community engagement side. On those 5 different engagements that we've done so far, we have been met with what I will refer to as warm rooms in every engagement that we've done. The community seems to be very receptive to the conversation. We met with 40, maybe 45, maybe even 50 seniors on Friday, and we weren't necessarily sure exactly what type of room we were going to be walking into. And that room was very warm and engaged in the process here that we're going through. So everything that we've seen out in the public here has been very encouraging towards this particular project at this particular point in time. So with that, less of me, more of you guys. I'll turn it over to you folks.
Just a quick follow-up on inspections. So if I understand correctly, then the structural and engineering kind of inspection would really more take place as we move forward with renovation?
Correct. And that was also something that MCP had stressed to us, that if you found a structural issue, for example, during the renovation project, you would fix it at that particular point in time. They basically indicated that anything that would happen with a structure like this could be easily remedied during a renovation project and or the expansion for that PD space that we've talked about.
Discussion from council members. Ms. Padova, I know you had a series of questions. Have they been answered?
I believe that you have answered all of them.
Okay.
I think.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Appreciate it. So this item will be on for second reading and adoption on the September 6th meeting. And the last public hearing will also be conducted that same date. I will just state to some of my colleagues here for me that whenever I've been talking with residents about this project, I've also received fairly warm feedback that if this all goes the way we all are expecting it to go, that this seems to be a good move for the city to be able to remedy the critical need of updated police department space while simultaneously providing us with a new modernized city hall. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, administration. Thank you, council colleagues. This concludes our meeting. Thank you.